So Hardhat just says, I'm launching a meme coin. And I'm like, no.
As I was kind of getting feedback, like it was pretty clear that there wasn't really a great way to set aside some allocation of the OR token without sort of compromising on some of the fair launch principles. As a founder, like I'm forced to build a company that makes real revenue, for one, which I think is important.
What do people do to get started? Are they setting up something on their home computer? Is it their phone? What's the easiest way to get started with mining OR? Yeah, it's good to meet you both, Hardhat and Alejandra. You know, we've already met, but Hardhat's first time you and I are getting acquainted here. But maybe just to like kick things off, Alejandra, if you could introduce yourself. We're going to spend a little more time on OR to get started. So maybe, yeah, just to lay the land, if you could tell us about yourself and Foundation Capital.
Yes, happy to. So I'm Alejandra Martinez. I'm a partner at Foundation Capital within our crypto practice. Joined Foundation Capital almost a couple of years ago already. Was previously at another crypto fund. I keep telling people that I landed in crypto in the weirdest of times. It was early 2022. My fund actually pivoted at the time to crypto. I was working in fintech and doing stuff in Latin America at the time. And so a very interesting time to change. I went to a school reunion around the time and people are like, wait, you just pivoted to crypto and Luna just fell. What are you doing? I was like, well, like I was doing stuff in Latin America and I was trying to figure out at the time whether crypto had, a future with that in mind. And I just thought at the time that the emerging markets thesis was extremely strong. So I stuck around through the bear market and I'm still around and really happy for that. And so a few months later, maybe a year later, I ended up joining Foundation, doing mostly stuff in crypto, but every once in a while stuff in Latin America too. Foundation itself, though, has a very long history, both as a fund and in crypto, 30 years as a fund based in Silicon Valley with an enterprise fintech and crypto practice. We started investing in crypto around 10 years ago. And so obviously our thesis has evolved a lot from just peer-to-peer Bitcoin projects in 2014 to looking into alternative L1s and high throughput L1s in 2018, 2019. We were early investors in Solana and have remained super active in that ecosystem. It's interesting when you see the portfolio companies adding up over time. Just we've done so much in the last 3 to 4 years. And so OR and Regulate Labs is one of our latest projects. And so we were super excited to be able to partner with Hardhat on this.
Cool. Yeah, I feel like it seems inevitable that you talk to so many people and they get sucked in during some boom time. And then the question is if they stick it out through the inevitable decline that occurs afterwards. In Reed and my case, like both of us joined during the 2017, 2018 boom. And for a year plus, like what we did at that time was ICOs through CoinList. And it was like, everyone was like, oh, ICOs are definitely dead. And yeah, they came back, although I'm starting to think they are a little bit dead, at least for the time being. They aren't quite as popular as they once were. Alejandra,
thing to actually join during a bear market because people give you time that they wouldn't be able to when things are just shifting so much from one week to another. And so I was actually very appreciative of just like the ability to on-ramp during a time that for some people were slower, but for many people, those who were around were just really passionate about making sure that the industry succeeded. So I'm retrospectively very grateful about that.
Yeah, I agree. Using the bear market to make connections, make friends, people that you can depend on when things get really crazy and people seemingly don't have time for anything else. It is a good use of time if you're not making money during those periods. How about you, Hardhat? What about you? When did you get into the space?
Yeah, I was definitely a latecomer. 2021 is where I kind of first really got involved. My background prior to that was primarily in payments. So I worked at the payments team at Uber for about 4 years in San Francisco, primarily working on banking integrations, some credit card stuff, a few cash products in like Latin America and the Middle East, and primarily just building rails to move money around the world and pay drivers. And so I think it was there that like I got a taste of like what the legacy payment rails look like, and like working with banks and emailing CSV files and XML files around to try to move millions of dollars. I was a crypto skeptic for like a really long time. I had a few friends who tried to convince me on Bitcoin. I didn't quite buy the like dollar hedge narrative at the time, and obviously was familiar with Ethereum, but like coming from that like real time payments world, Ethereum just never made much sense to us as like a potential like a solution for payment rails, because the fees and settlement times just like weren't competitive. And so yeah, I was like a skeptic for a really long time. And that was until a friend had showed me Solana in 2021. And that was the first time where it really clicked for me. That's like, okay, these systems had evolved and developed to a point where I can send like $10,000 to anyone, anywhere in the world. It settles in a second and costs a fraction of a cent and runs 24/7. And that struck me as competitive to like a lot of the systems that we were using at Uber to do payments. And so that was what kind of sucked me in. And yeah, I just started dabbling, like building a number of things on Solana, and have kind of been here the last 3 years now, or a little over 3 years. And so, or it's just kind of latest project, but definitely not the first.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, with the Bridge acquisition, obviously, like the payment space, people are paying more and more attention to it. That being like the first use case of crypto is peer-to-peer payments. But like having that passed at Uber, like what do you think would have to happen for someone like Uber to move over to using stablecoin rails for payments? Like, is it something they do through Stripe, like build their own? Like, do you think that's even something they'd consider ever?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been at the company for like a number of years now, so I'm not sure what the current conversations are, but it's just a matter of like convincing the management that the like business case and fees make sense, because I mean, we had continual negotiations with like all of our payment providers to try to bring down costs, and payments, at least at the time, was like a cost center for the business. Like it cost the company money to move money, which was kind of surprising, like that it was so expensive. And so, yeah, I mean, I think if there were like organized outreach to some of these companies, and like we, could make the business case to them that like they would save money by using stablecoin payment rails, I think for sure the folks would see it. But it's just they're coming from decades of experience working with the banks, and they have those relationships that it just takes time for them to like fully grok what's happening.
It seems inevitable, definitely for any company that's doing smaller transactions internationally. Just feels like it really is just a matter of time. But I know we're not here to talk about Uber, so we can maybe transition over. Aura's super cool because one of the things that we always look for at Lattice are projects that we think can on-ramp new users. And that's like one of the things you guys are really focused on, is being an on-ramp to crypto, or the first touch point. And it's cool because like so many people, you always ask them like, how'd you get into crypto? And they're like, oh, I was like mining Bitcoin in my dorm room or something along those lines. And those types of opportunities don't really exist anymore. That's one reason we like DePIN. We think there's some cool like on-ramping opportunities in DePIN to get started. But yeah, like, did you start with that problem? Like, hey, people can't get into, like, it's harder for people to access crypto. Let's try to solve that. Or what was the genesis of the concept? And maybe like as part of that, kind of like laying the groundwork for what Aura is.
Yeah, for sure. I think there are a few like large, tailwinds that were like pushing me in this direction. One was just like the prior project I was working on before, or we were looking to pivot. We eventually shut it down, but we were looking to pivot for a few months, and looking at various opportunities that we could get involved with, and this is time frame wise, like March of 2022. Sorry, 23, just last year. And we spent a long time looking at, could we like play a role in bridging Bitcoin, like BTC to Solana, and the technologies involved in doing that. And so went on a bunch of deep dives, understanding kind of the smart contract capabilities on Bitcoin, the way the multi-sigs work, the way that the assets are custodied and then sort of issued on Solana. And the more we looked into that, I just couldn't come to conviction that that was either like a good business for us to be involved in. Neither is it, I think, like a great long-term architecture for the industry. Like I just wasn't convinced that a lot of BTC would actually migrate off of the main chain, because from my sense, talking to BTC holders, like one of their, like they like the Bitcoin network for its security. And like when you migrate those coins or bridge them off of the main chain, there's very different security assumptions. And in some ways, those like, issued assets on Solana or wrapped Bitcoin on Solana, it's not the like decentralized state-free currency that BTC on Bitcoin is. You have this central issuer that carries a lot of the risk. And so it's just a completely different asset. And so we didn't get involved in that, but like a member of our team at the time just kind of made a joke. Well, like, what if we rewrote Bitcoin as a smart contract and launched that on Solana? That would get us quote unquote Bitcoin on Solana. And it was kind of just a funny joke at the time, like a different reframing of the problem. And we eventually decided not to do it at the time. And I kind of took a break from crypto for a little bit after we wound down that project, because I was trying to figure out what to do next. But that joke kind of sat in the back of my mind for a little bit. And then, yeah, kind of gelled with this other feeling that mining had been this like cultural cornerstone of crypto for since day one, with like the original Bitcoin launch. And neither myself nor like any of the folks that I had joined the industry with had ever mined anything before. And that felt just kind of odd. Like we all intuitively understand it and like it makes sense to us. And it seems like it's such a big part of crypto, but like no one I knew had ever done it. And it is kind of like, we had this question of like, could we bring back that culture in some way, that energy, like recreate a mineable token on one of these high throughput proof of stake networks, and ideally like to tweak or design the system in some way that we could enable or guarantee like mass participation, that it wouldn't become dominated by ASICs and sort of high compute devices. Yeah.
Got it. So maybe it makes total sense. Maybe just so people can kind of understand. I mean, simply you said a smart contract-esque representation of Bitcoin on Solana. Is there more people should kind of know if this is their first time getting introduced to Ore?
Yeah, the basic sort of way we describe it right now is like Ore is this cryptocurrency everyone can mine. It's like Bitcoin in that it's fair launch, fixed supply, proof of work, but it's native to Solana. So it's fast, cheap, and composable. And that composability part in particular allows us to do a lot of things that other sort of mineable proof of work tokens have not done before. Because Ore is not a blockchain. It's not, the algorithm is not a consensus protocol. We're at the smart contract layer in Solana, so we can integrate with DeFi in a lot of kind of unique ways. And we're primarily using that right now to drive deep sort of integrations and liquidity pools with a lot of the real world assets and like DePIN projects on Solana.
Got it.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was on this panel earlier this week with the state of Oregon government related to blockchain, AI, and green finance. And one of the questions that came up was related to proof of work and like them trying to like be like, well, like what about all this electricity that's consumed? And me and one other panelist that were on that kind of represented the blockchain side, where I was like, well, like really no one's not like launching new proof of work networks anymore. So I'm totally wrong in that capacity. But like, is it, maybe just to like understand the proof of work mining as it compares to Bitcoin, like you said, no ASICs. So like, is it as energy intensive or different function than what you'd maybe expect from traditional proof of work networks?
Yeah, it is a bit different. A lot of this comes down to the hash function that's chosen. The hash function in particular that Bitcoin uses is called SHA-256. And it's what we would call like highly parallelizable, meaning you can design in hardware, like hardware optimized systems that only do SHA-256 and are extremely performant at it, like many orders of magnitude better than a CPU could be. And so if you're trying to mine Bitcoin today, you basically need an ASIC. You need that performance out of your compute device, as well as cheap energy. So Bitcoin mining today is primarily a way to convert like just cheap energy costs into these tokens. We opted, in order to sort of keep the mining dynamics as open and accessible to as many people as possible, we intentionally chose like a very non-parallelizable hash function. So it's very hard to optimize either in GPUs or in hardware. And that has kind of led to very different mining dynamics because a CPU is about as competitive as like a GPU. A GPU, like with various optimizations, can get a little bit more performant, but it's not like many orders of magnitude. They're kind of still in the same range. So your performance gap between your like high-end compute devices and a person with a laptop is like pretty close. Like they're kind of on par with one another. So that's allowed a lot more people to participate. And we don't see these same like super large industrial scale miners. In fact, we talked to a few who had reached out and were curious about Ore, and when they learned about the hash function, they were like, okay, this doesn't make sense for us. And on one level, it's like, okay, I'm like a little sad it doesn't make sense for you, but at the same time, it's like, well, actually, the thesis is kind of proven out because like their business only makes sense if they can acquire sort of, a large chunk of the ASIC supply chain. Like they buy up as many new ASICs as they can, as well as make cheap energy deals with governments. And there is no ASIC today for this hash function. So there isn't that like performance difference. And what we see today on Ore is like a lot more people with just laptops and phones participating. And there are folks with larger operations, but it's not like they're heavily dominating the system. It's been a lot more dynamic.
Got it. Alejandra, have you ever mined any crypto assets?
Not until Ore, right? Okay. And I think that's what was interesting to us about it too, right? Like there was a time in which everybody, as you were saying, Mike, got into Bitcoin through mining. Like I definitely had people who I knew in college who were doing it for their benefit. Definitely the school did not love it at one point or another. But yeah, I think that's what was interesting to us. It really brought proof of work back to a forefront when at a time it had already kind of been forgotten for onboarding and without the technical debt that Bitcoin brings in. And so it really solves a couple of things that Bitcoin can no longer solve, and we don't see it being able to solve in the future either. One of them is mining at accessible cost, and the other one is creating tokens and distributing tokens that can actually be used to execute transactions. And so what we saw a lot with the initial proposal was solving that part A of like a fair launch and distributing tokens through mining to a ton of different people. But what we saw in it in the future as well was just creating this token basically that can be used for many things in ways that at least native Bitcoin today is still not being able to be used. And with the store of value narrative, like who knows how these other uses for Bitcoin will evolve, but or kind of like how we saw Solana just like natively build for POS systems and like really fast execution with like its high throughput design. We see OR kind of like as a parallel to that, but for a proof of work token.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, like it's called the Token Warrant. Usually on the episodes, like someone does a private round, maybe it's their seed, Series A, what have you. I think this is our first fair launch. So, Hardhat, you guys, like, when did you guys did the fair launch? Then Alejandra and Foundation Capital sees it. Like, how did this all go down? And like, was the plan always to raise a round, or were they just that persistent in trying to invest?
No, I mean, the plan was not to raise a round. I before I launched, or I didn't know. I sort of assumed it was going to flop. Actually, like I was just doing it for fun as a side project, and that was sort of why I had created the Hardhat pseudonym. Was like my personal identity was known for a prior project, and I just kind of wanted to launch this thing for fun. I was starting to dabble in Solana again, and I was actually reaching out to like a number of teams and old friends, like sort of applying for jobs like in the week before launched OR. And I didn't expect it was going to get as much reception as it did. It definitely blew up, way larger than I expected. Obviously created a lot of issues for Solana at the time in April, and kind of went from like 0 to like 30,000 followers on Twitter in like, I don't know, a week and a half, 2 weeks or something like that. All organic. Like it was no like paid bots or anything. Yeah. I mean, it was just a very kind of quick growth period. And then I enjoyed at the time, like how scrappy it was. It was just myself developing, and I had a few friends that I was like consulting with and asking questions for like feedback and stuff. But I was the only developer, and I enjoyed how scrappy it was. And Alejandra had actually reached out on Twitter during the first like 2 weeks of the V1 mining period. If I recall correctly, I think they wanted to invest, but I was like, invest in what? Like I wasn't sure what we were what we were selling. I still didn't have like the long-term vision or plan. Like there was no entity, there was no company. It was just myself like writing some code. And the Colosseum guys, because I had submitted it as part of the hackathon, they were also, wanted to chat about like their accelerator program. And I eventually decided to incorporate an entity to continue developing it further, because I was just reaching a point where it's like I need more hands if we're going to continue this project. And like there was a lot of traction, and like there's a very active, engaged user base. So it didn't really make sense to walk away from it. And neither did I want to.
So in parallel to all of this, I spend a lot of time on Twitter, obviously, and probably just too much. And I just saw this new person just becoming a reply guy with very technical answers to questions about Solana. And so I was like, oh, this person kind of sounds interesting. Perhaps I should reach out. And as soon as I was thinking about that, I think it was Mert who posted something like, if you're a serious builder, just like, don't tell me that you're going to launch a meme coin or something like that. And just like trolling about the amount of people who were launching meme coins at the time. And so Hardhat just says, I'm launching a meme coin. And I'm like, no, this guy that I thought was just going to be a serious builder is perhaps not the person who I thought he was. And in retrospect, I guess like the first, it depends on how you define meme coins. But if you think about our community rallying around a cause without there being a utility attached to it yet at one point or another, then you could define OR as a meme coin. So, but at the time I was like, okay, this is silly. And a few days later, he launches OR V1. I'm like, okay, I have to reach out. And so that's when I reached out and got a couple other people on my team on board as well. And we just started having conversations with Hardhat about how are you thinking about the future of this? Like, is there a way for us to get involved? And I think we had months-long conversations about what getting involved would look like, and as well as just kind of talking about the design at the time and like many different decisions. And we went back and forth so many times. Like the iteration of how our partnership would look probably fluctuated back and forth maybe 5 or 6 times. But I think we landed in a really interesting place in which, Hardhat knows the community best and what will drive people forward. And so ultimately he was like, there were 2 options: leaving or as a fair launch, and figuring out a way of like potentially building an ecosystem around it, and that's what we would be investing. Or the other one was maybe switching the model for or. And I think it was Sushi that had the 10% development pool that actually, as tokens were mined, 10% was allocated to Sushi. And there were definitely ways in that was not carried out effectively, and that a lot of tokens were sold at once, and there was like not a lot of like governance around how that was managed. But there was a possibility in which like maybe that model could work today and leave you leverage with or for everything that tokens are used, right? Like getting on exchanges, rallying ecosystem participants, like selling locked tokens for investors for future fundraising needs. There are all of these things that tokens do for fundraising today, and that's why there are investor allocations and ecosystem allocations because of that. But in a fair launch, you don't have that. And so there are definitely trade-offs to both models. And in the end, Hardhat can talk more about how he thought about that. And I thought it was just very noble to his community and the long term of the project. But there are definitely some trade-offs. But we were so crazy about getting involved that we were like, we'll take whichever model you think ultimately is best. We just really want to participate in this because we think that it just unlocks an entirely new design space, not only for token distribution, but for many other things that we just can't even anticipate today. And so this was how we found to stay involved.
Yeah, it's a good lesson for founders that being a reply guy or gal can be an effective strategy for attracting attention on Twitter by investors, whoever else. So yeah, kudos to you, Hardhat. So then I guess it sounds like, and maybe we don't even get into the specifics necessarily, but there was a fair launch, tokens are out there, tradable. You guys come in and you're like, hey, we're super excited what you're building and want to be a part of what the future potential of it is. Is there a community at this point that you're like, hey, like maybe we want to bring in some other folks? Like obviously there's can be tension with, the people that feel like, oh, is this some like VC sweetheart deal? Like, how did you navigate that? And, how much did you involve folks or not involve or communicate with people that are already, participating and excited about what you guys are building?
Yeah, it was tricky for sure. I wouldn't say it was easy. I had to disappear from the Discord for a little bit because I didn't everyone was asking about like investment, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't want to say something and like commit to or like release some information that I then later had to, go back on. And so I was trying not to get pulled into like sensitive public conversations while like the fundraise was still going on. And like, nor, have it be perceived as like some public solicitation thing. So yeah, I kind of intentionally like disappeared from the Discord for a bit, kept my tweets like, I don't know, fairly moderated. And I had a number of just like friends and advisors, people who were like very in tune with the project and the community that I was kind of consulting with as we analyzed these different models. Because what had happened too, the V1 had a number of issues in terms of the design incentivized a lot of spam, which created issues for Solana, which also affected the actual like people weren't able to participate in the V1 because there was so much spam and so many issues on Solana. So I saw that as like existential almost. We weren't achieving the goals that we set out to achieve, and it was clear we needed to redesign the system. But the V1 contract, I intentionally froze it prior to launch. So it's part of the selling point. So, but we did have one admin function that we were able to use to basically pause mining. And I sort of made a semi-controversial decision at the time, but I think has sort of been justified in retrospect to pause the V1 system after 2 weeks and then say we're going to take a number of months to redesign for V2. And it was in that V2 redesign period that we were also talking with Foundation around the fundraising round, and there's all these different, the opportunity was there to maybe go a different route. And as we kind of analyzed the different models, there were some that could have been described as a pre-mine, or some percentage of the mine supply would be allocated to a team, an investment pool, for example. And there was all sorts of different ways to slice and dice that. But as I was kind of getting feedback, it was pretty clear that there wasn't really a great way to set aside some allocation of the OR token without sort of compromising on some of the fair launch principles that the V1 had been launched with, and that a lot of people had bought into the V1 system on that pitch. And so to go back on that, the more people I talked to, it's it just would have undermined a lot of the trust, but then I think long-term outlook that the community had for the token, because that was one of the primary selling points in the V1. And so the model we eventually went with, was for equity and a token warrant on potential future token launches, because that I felt made the most sense, and I thought it aligned incentives basically, and I still believe that it's the best way to align incentives, because as a founder, I'm forced to build a company that makes real revenue, for one, which I think is important, and then two, it didn't compromise on what the community had bought into, or those values. And so that was the model we eventually went with, and then all the effort went into the V2 redesign, and we launched that in August, and that's the system that's currently running. But
yeah, I mean, Alejandra, I don't know how many deals you've done like this, but it's probably unique in some capacity. So I'm curious, just from a process perspective, selling this through internally, is a bit different. And then just when you think about it, there's obviously this cool on-ramp for crypto people to come into the project that isn't just buy my token on a DEX or, Coinbase for that matter. And it has a cool origin story, because it's not this wasn't designed to be maybe a traditional crypto project. Sometimes the best things are started as a side project, and they just kind of catch fire, which it sounds like OR did. But what gets you most excited about the potential future applications beyond, how this got started?
Yeah. So, I mean, just starting with the first question about how to sell this to the team, I think given there was a lot of back and forth on just how do we design the best model on this partnership, by the time that we got to what worked for all of us, the team was just pretty bought into the experiment of what OR could become, and the ecosystem around it could become. And in the end, we're early stage investors. We're investing mostly in people and in big ideas. And then those ideas can change and evolve a lot over time. And so for us, having known Hardhat through the process and just seeing what he'd done in such a short amount of time, it seemed like a pretty obvious early stage decision for us, regardless of the format that eventually took shape. And so I think from that perspective, it wasn't a really hard sell, despite it being very unconventional. For us, definitely the OR token, and participating in the OR token was the clearest path, I guess, on how do we make sure that incentives are aligned and over time, and the team has enough funding in perpetuity, because the only way to maintain funding is to make sure that the community stays alive. But at the same time, if that's going to destroy the core principles of the project, then it's not going anywhere anyways. And so So that's how we ended up just deciding on this like other common ground thing, not only for between me and Hardhat, but also with the rest of the team that was involved. As for the vision, I think this is where it gets super interesting, right? Because we talked about the part about distribution and putting mining in the hands of way more people. But I do think that ultimately, well, mining is going to end at one point or another. And by then we have to have built out something else around the ecosystem for ore. And that's where I think that this is where ore is so different from Bitcoin. Like everything that we wish almost that we could do on Bitcoin, we will hopefully still be able to do on ore, whether it is using ore as a way of transacting, or whether it is using ore as the backbone for new proof of work systems that get built on top of it. And so I don't think that there is a specific roadmap as to what exactly is going to be designed that a Hardhat has revealed to everyone at this point or another, but there are definitely lots of ideas as to what we can do next.
Yeah, well, I could expand on that too. Like, I think the longer we've worked on this, the more we've realized that like building at the application layer in Solana opens up just like so many possibilities. It's allowed us to do things that like no other proof of work token could do, because every other proof of work project in the past is primarily it's like an L1 chain. The proof of work is like a key part of the consensus protocol, and so you're kind of restricted in like how to design that system, because if you go too far outside of those bounds, like you potentially risk compromising the security of your chain. But ore isn't a chain, it's just a smart contract. And so we actually don't have these like consensus concerns, like Solana is providing consensus, and that gives us a lot of flexibility to experiment. And so the latest experiment that we've been running two, basically. The first is this boost system. So we were able to layer into the mining protocol a staking layer where participants can stake various tokens and earn a multiplier on their mining rewards. And we view this as like an incentive system. We can set up multipliers for various tokens that then incentivizes miners to stake those tokens, and then they earn more of the supply. And in particular, we're kind of focused on setting up multipliers for LP tokens, like for folks who are providing liquidity. And what we really want to use this for is like building out this liquidity network, if you will, a bunch of different liquidity pools with the real world assets on Solana, the tokenized commodities like oil and gold and farmland and real estate, as well as all the DePIN projects that are launching on Solana, like Helium and Hivemapper and Cusco. It's like Solana has attracted a bunch of these sort of real world assets, tokenized commodities, and DePIN credits that's like you don't get on a Bitcoin L2. A lot of these projects are launching on Solana for the performance benefits of the chain, and then I think there's like a network effect of teams who see other similar projects like them launching on Solana, and so they want to be sort of co-located with those projects. And what we want to use these incentives for, is building out like deep liquidity between, say, ore in Helium and ore in Honey from Hivemapper, and ore in a number of stables, and ore in like tokenized oil products. And that is that liquidity network, the fact that ore is exchangeable for all of these real world things with very low slippage, and that you can move between these real world assets via the ore pools with very low slippage, that we believe like long-term ore can play a pretty unique role in the Solana DeFi ecosystem. So that's kind of what our current experiments are focused on, is how to grow that liquidity and partner with these various projects to build those pools.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, anywhere I think project teams are an on-ramp plus have massive, like eventually have your own massive distribution. It's like, okay, any DePIN that wants to launch, maybe they go to you guys first. as a bootstrapping methodology, like, hey, how do we find our initial community as we go through OR? So, that's, we believe in that. I think that's, not always well executed, but like if you guys can pull it off, and I think your goal is, 100 billion users, it's super powerful. Maybe just because like we're getting a little bit low on time, is like, because on-ramping is kind of, the distribution is kind of the most interesting thing here. Maybe like just for people that are finding out about it for the first time, like, what do people do to get started? Are they setting up something on their home computer? Is it their phone? What's the easiest way to get started with mining ore?
Yeah, the primary tool that most miners use today is our command line interface. You can install it on any machine, any laptop, Windows, Linux, Mac. And via there, you can join a mining pool. There are a number of like hash power mining pools that have popped up that help sort of reduce costs for miners. And so that's kind of the most popular method that people choose. We have a number of guides in the Discord for getting set up, and a pretty active community in there that helps people work through issues. We're currently in the process of like completely redesigning the website. There's some challenges. We wanted to make the website a tool, like a front end tool that's easy to use that folks could mine with. And there are some like real difficult technical challenges with mining through a browser in particular. Like the browser, it's just not very efficient for this kind of work. But it's a fun technical thing to try to work on. But we are looking at, one, redesigning the website, and then two, porting it to a desktop application. So you'll get much better performance at your machine. You just install that app and can click go, basically.
I'm curious, actually. Go ahead, Alejandra.
Oh, no, just something that I found very interesting, just going through a lot of the hackathon projects for this latest cohort as well, is there are definitely some submissions around OR of just how you can join the mining pools with like a few clicks. And I think there was a gaming one as well around around mining ore. And so there are definitely some very interesting submissions in there. And so you see the ecosystem kind of coalescing around this, like, let's bring in more people through the ecosystem via ore in a way that is extremely simple for someone who might not have a technical background that most people who are mining ore in V1 or even in V2 before these mining pools were enabled can do.
Yeah, one of the projects that submitted in the latest hackathon, one of the larger mining pools, they had built a mobile application. So you can download their mobile app on like a Solana Saga device and then mine from your phone. And yeah, it's been very interesting and fun to try to work with the community as well, because some of these things that we had on our roadmap, the community is doing faster than we've been able to do. And so we're kind of like, okay, what are the things that we as a team are like the only ones that we strategically need to do and can do that no one else can do, and try to focus our time there, because the community has just started picking up a lot of this stuff and running with it.
That's awesome. Normally, teams have to raise tens or hundreds of millions of dollars to get developers to build on them. So if people are doing this just because they're really excited about, or you're definitely a step ahead. And it sounds like Foundation, like you guys are looking for deals or looking for potential up and coming projects that are leveraging, or as part of to expand on this thesis that you have for them.
I think a lot of our priority here is just making sure that the breadth of the ground that we can cover around what it is like to build an OR ecosystem is as extensive as possible. Is still very early, and so we have limited resources in terms of human capacity and hours in the day. So the more people that are working on it, the better it will be for the overall community. And it's just super interesting to speak to passionate people about this. Like, I know people who have been running there, or who have been mining ore at all times, regardless of whether it's a cost to them or not. They're just extremely passionate about making sure that the project succeeds, and we're definitely on the same boat.
Cool. Well, I will leave it with that. Thank you both for coming on. I'll definitely start mining some more after this call. But maybe just to leave it on like what's the best people to stay in touch? Is it Twitter or Telegrams? How do people reach out and keep abreast of Or and Foundation?
Yeah, I think the best channels or our most active channels are Twitter right now. Hardhat Chad is my account, and then Or Supply is the project account. And so, yeah, basically all the announcements go out from there. If you're trying to get even more involved, we have a very active Discord community where a lot of the ongoing debates and proposals and yeah, all of that stuff happens. So yeah, if you need support, definitely check out that. There's a link to that Discord from our website, which is or.supply. And so yeah, I recommend anyone go to those channels, check them out, and yeah, that's the easiest way to get involved.
And for me, Twitter is also my most active channel. So Alemartcard, ALEMARTCARD. Or you can find my email on the foundation website as well. Just mention it's through the podcast so that I can filter through it a little bit.
Or be a consistent reply gal or gal. And,
yeah, we should all become reply.
She will spot you there. Yeah, thanks again, and we'll see you all soon.